All right, you guys, welcome to another Future Live event. We're here in Santa Monica on a holiday, and we're gathered amongst friends, and we're going to be talking to Matthew Manos, and he has a very nice company. And we're going to be talking to him. He's going to share his models of impact and how his company's philosophy of giving half the work away for free, that's an interesting philosophy. That's an interesting approach to business, and somewhat controversial to some people. So we're going to get into it. So you guys stick around. All right, we're back. Let's do it. Through the miracle of television, there was like a show open or something there, you guys. Okay, Matthew, you have some slides, right?
I do. I have some slides I want to blow through. I want to give you guys a little bit of a sense of my background and actually spend as much time possible with Chris brainstorming some things with this pretty dice right here. First of all, just to have these on deck, how many of you like the color orange? Okay, so that's quite a few. How many of you don't like the color green? Okay, so we'll use orange and green because half the audience likes orange and no one dislikes green. So we've got that covered. This is Models of Impact. It's a methodology for balancing revenue and impact. That's something I've been doing with my own company, Verynice, for quite a while. I want to tell you guys a little bit about my story and how that led me to the design of this game that we'll demo as well. So my story starts with this number, $8 billion. That's not my money, sadly. But that's the amount of money that nonprofit organizations in the United States alone are actually spending on people like me every year, on design and marketing professionals. Granted, sounds like a lot of money. It is a lot of money, but there's also actually 1 million nonprofit organizations in the United States. Even when you divvy that up equally, this is a lot of resources. And I don't know about you, but for me, when I heard about that, I couldn't help but think, what would happen if there was some kind of new model that would allow organizations, especially small nonprofits, to have access to these really important design and marketing services, but maybe at a fraction of the cost or completely for free. If we could figure something like that out, could we actually help put a bigger dent into some of the world's most persistent problems like hunger, housing, water access, and more without actually doing any extra work, just by taking resources that already exist? So I got really obsessed with that idea, and I came to learn that there's something called pro bono. Has anybody here done pro bono work before? Okay.
Do you guys know what pro bono means?
Pro bono, short for pro bono publico, literally means for the good of the public. So it doesn't actually directly translate to for free. It's really for good, right? To better society, to contribute to society. Most people attribute it with free work. The pro bono movement started in the late 1800s in the legal industry. A guy named Reginald Hebert Smith wrote a book called Justice in the Poor that basically advocated for lawyers to donate their services to immigrants coming to the United States. And in the 50s and 60s with the Ad Council, that started to hit the design and marketing industries and got more popular there. For me, I actually got my start doing pro bono work when I could do stuff like this. I used to skateboard competitively when I was in high school. Started skateboarding competitively in middle school as well. And as a result, I was pretty much always at the skate park training. Sadly, I can only kind of do this still at a very depressing scale, but I can still get around a bowl, and you'll still find me at skate parks here and there. But there was one trip that I went to the park, and I met a man who was in a wheelchair, and he was ripping around the park far better than I and anybody else. And this is before YouTube, so it was before you saw really cool stuff online all the time. He actually did a flip in the bowl, and I knew I just had to approach this guy. So I approached him, learned he was the founder of a nonprofit that taught kids in wheelchairs how to participate in extreme sports. About a week prior, my godmother had given me a pirated copy of Photoshop, and so I had just been teaching myself design and thought, hey, why not design some stickers for this guy as practice? And that became my first pro bono client.
How old were you?
I was 16 at the time.
Wow.
So a few years later, when I was 19, from my sophomore dorm room at UCLA, I launched Verynice. And Verynice is now a design strategy consultancy that gives half of its work away for free to nonprofits. So still inspired by that time at the skate park, basically been doing the same thing ever since, but just in slightly different ways. This give half model is something that is core to a lot of my philosophy of approaching anything, basically of balance. How can you give and get? How can you balance yourself in terms of sustainability, but also in terms of purpose or fulfillment as well? We've worked with all kinds of folks, a lot of people you've heard of, a lot of people that you haven't heard of, hopefully yet, like Google, UNICEF, NASA, MTV, et cetera. And our services span quite a few things. We started in the visual graphic design space, but actually now do, I would say, primarily design strategy, which is things like workshop facilitation or consulting for nonprofit organizations, et cetera. Couple of projects. We worked with Google on a project called Billion Acts, short for Billion Acts of Peace. Really cool mobile application that's trying to get 1 billion people to do something good. That's the entire goal. It's backed by an organization called Peace Jam. They've been around for about 40 years, and so far has almost 15 million acts of peace submitted through the app. This can be something as small as picking up a piece of trash, something as big as actually housing a refugee, for example. We did a big branding project for UNICEF for their project called U-Report, which is a SMS-based system for reporting natural disasters, famine, need for certain things, all across all kinds of countries as well. This is just one slide to show a really big variation of color that comes from that. There was a time when we had a New York office, and my partner led this project to actually really be there close with UNICEF working on this initiative. And here in Los Angeles, we have a big homeless population, and this is something that we spend a lot of time with, as you can imagine, a lot of nonprofit organizations working in that space, especially our offices in the Arts District, just a couple blocks away from Skid Row as well. So we get involved into doing a lot of annual reports or visual graphic design, et cetera, for those kinds of organizations. So through this give half model, so far we've donated over $7.5 million worth of services to over 500 organizations. And we also donate resources as well, which you'll learn a little bit more about with models of impact and a few other things that we have. But this is talking about our pro bono work. I decided that that wasn't enough, though. That $8 billion number that I told you guys about earlier, right? If you subtract $7.5 million from that, it's kind of depressing how little impact we've actually made, right? If our goal is to help organizations alleviate some of these expenses, we pretty much can't do this by ourselves. So I wrote this book in 2012, 2013 called How to Give Half of Your Work Away for Free, which basically open sourced our business model and shared best practices and actually some of the business benefits of doing pro bono as well. Spent a lot of time thinking about that model. This is where we start to get into the models of impact story. Couldn't help but think, okay, what else is out there? How else can businesses balance impact and revenue? Turns out there's a lot of ways. I actually collected over 200 different models that are out there. And this is what I would refer to as models of impact. They're either impact models of sustainable ways of creating some kind of impact in the world, or revenue models, sustainable ways of actually generating income for your business. Mapped these things out, did way too much research on this stuff. I'm really, really a nerd when it comes to these kinds of models, so if any of you ever want to talk about it, you know how to find me. Just Google Verynice, first thing that pops up. We mapped these things out. We started piloting it as a workshop with different communities, and next thing you know, I had a pretty decent methodology that I was ready to share with people. So we put it up online, modelsofimpact.co. And it's essentially a role-playing and ideation game that helps simulate the process of starting a social enterprise, so starting a business that balances revenue and impact. It's designed to be a lot of fun. It was originally designed actually with designers in mind, so that actually it can teach people about business in a non-scary way. Because let's face it, right? Designers don't really like talking about business models too much. At least I didn't. A lot of people that I surround myself don't. So I wanted to really frame it as a game, something that's fun, something you can engage with. It's been used in 100 countries. It really had a lot of organic success, a lot of these workshops, kind of like what Chris and I will demo, popping up all over the place to teach people about business model design and about this kind of ethos as well. I mentioned earlier what a social enterprise is. To me, the way that I define it is an organization that balances these two things, impact and revenue. So the traditional way of thinking about a business model is it's purely a revenue model. It's purely a way of actually making income, right? which obviously every business needs income, every business needs revenue, otherwise it's a hobby, it's not a business. There has to be some kind of exchange going on. My whole theory is that if that's the only focus, that it could lead to burnout because of a lack of fulfillment that might come with that, and that businesses also actually have a really great opportunity to give back to communities in places especially that government might be falling short as well. I think when you look at, thinking about the situation here, right, with Chris's story, I see, Blind in the future actually kind of living in this Venn diagram. You take this really successful design firm and you take this really successful platform that's creating a lot of impact. That marriage is actually this Venn diagram, from my perspective. The process itself is really easy. It normally takes around 3 hours. Normally it's done in groups of 5 with about 30 people in a room. The most people we've ever had at one of these workshops was in Mexico City last year with about 500 people. It was absolutely insane. If any of you have ever facilitated a workshop, basically don't do that. We ended up having about 8 facilitators in total running around in all these different rooms full of 100 people here, 100 people here, etc. But it follows learn, invent, program, report. The basic idea is in the learn phase, you're embedding yourself in what are these models, what is social entrepreneurship, etc. Invent, which is what we're going to focus on tonight, you're coming up with ideas. You can see this as blue sky, anything's possible, ideate, have fun. Program, bringing that back down to earth. So, okay, great idea, but how will we actually do this? And then report, basically encouraging you to go out, share your idea, get some feedback, and probably cycle all over again. So I do want to play to start, or before we start. Chris, I don't know if you have any questions before we hop right into this.
I do have some questions for you. I just want to let you guys know a little bit about Matthew, so not everybody here knows who Matthew is. He mentioned briefly he went to UCLA to get his undergraduate, and then he went to Art Center to get his MFA. And I just recently discovered he's no longer teaching at Art Center because he's got a more amazing gig. He's teaching at USC with, what is it called?
The Iovine and Young Academy.
The Iovine and Young. You guys know who Iovine and Young are? Dr. Dre? Andre Young?
So Dr. Dre's technically my boss. That doesn't mean that I've met him yet, though. But if you follow the hierarchy, I technically work for Dr. Dre now, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, Jimmy Iovine and Dr. Dre started a program for the arts, right, at USC?
Yeah, so they saw a big gap basically in a lot of higher education, which I tend to agree with, is that it's very disciplinary. You go to school, you get really good at design, you get really good at business, you get really good at engineering. But what happens is, as many of you have probably faced in your jobs, those worlds actually connect all the time. So this program is really about integrating arts, business, and technology together.
Mm-hmm. So it's not so siloed. There's a crossover.
Trying to break down those walls.
Mm-hmm. So let's start with Verynice. How long has Verynice been around as a company?
So April is our 10-year anniversary, 10 years from the dorm room.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations, man.
Thank you.
You're just a few short days, weeks away from hitting that 10-year mark.
Yeah. It's exciting. And we started in 2008, which was the worst time ever to do something.
Is that when you graduated?
No, I graduated in 2010 from undergrad.
Okay, so you started before you graduated.
I did, yeah.
Okay. So tell me about the motivation to start the company and how the whole giving away half started.
Yeah, so Verynice really started as a hobby. I mentioned that moment in the skate park. That's when I started basically doing some freelance design, but mainly doing pro bono projects for local organizations. When I started at UCLA, when I moved down here, basically I was interfacing with different student groups all the time on campus, and they tended to be representatives of nonprofit organizations, and basically found myself being not happy with only doing the assignments given to me in the classroom and really wanting to start applying that right away to things. And really it just kind of escalated from there. So it went from student groups to real organizations outside of the campus, sort of snowballing, and had this light bulb go off actually of this give half model when one president of a student group graduated college. They went and got a job somewhere and they needed a designer and they called me up, and that was a paid gig. And that was this kind of light bulb of, oh, really interesting, right? Maybe maybe I don't have to only have an organization that does, pro bono work, maybe as a nonprofit itself or something. Maybe the pro bono work can actually lead to business as well, and maybe these things can be balanced. So that was kind of the really origin of seeing it as a business as opposed to a fun thing that I did at night.
Okay. Well, if you give away half your work, so here I'm out on the internet trying to teach people how to charge more. This seems diametrically opposed to like what I'm about. Yeah. Like, do you make any money? Are you starving? How does this even work?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I'll talk about how it works. So something really interesting about Verynice is our core team's pretty small. We have about 10 people that come to the office, but we have a network of almost, I can't say over yet, we're like one shy, so if anybody here ends up being interested, let me know, of almost 600 different volunteers. Those volunteers are also paid freelancers on paid assignments as well. And this is essentially designed to give us the bandwidth of a pretty large firm while actually being a small firm. And so as a result, actually doing the pro bono work costs us very little money because most of our role is on management of this kind of external group of people that are doing this work unpaid. A lot of that creative direction comes from me as well, and I'm somebody that's not salaried with the company either, so that helps. So that's kind of our model of actually getting the work done. That's sort of the secret sauce. At any given moment, we're working on 20 to 30 different projects, and if you do the math right, about 10 to 15 of those are pro bono work. Some of these are also actually sliding scale rates, so sometimes if a larger organization approaches us, we'll discount our rate slightly to fit the budget of whatever grant they might have gotten to do that project, and that helps too. But yeah, we've been able to grow. We've been profitable ever since starting. And I think a lot of times people see giving something away as losing something, but I have found that there's actual benefits to it. There can be the networking component of, hey, let me do some work for this nonprofit. Oh, turns out their board is super well connected to other companies that might hire me. Or, hey, I want to actually pivot the company, as has happened a couple of times, to integrate new services. Turns out no one will trust me to do that and pay me. So why don't I reach out to a nonprofit, do it for free, and gain some credibility in that space? That's actually entirely how we were able to pivot our company towards more design strategy work, is by offering that up for free and gaining that proof.
You guys have questions before we kind of dive into it a little bit deeper?
How do you manage your guidelines with the free projects?
Guidelines as in making sure that the work's done right, or?
Yeah, as far as it's easy to follow, design you can do something in one day, or right. If you like it, you can spend a week. So you have to be strict with the guidelines with the free projects. So how do you manage them?
Yeah, great question. So strict is a really good word. We're really strict with all of our projects. Basically, the big mistake that I used to make with pro bono work is I would get so inspired, I'd be like, hey, let's do this. And next thing you know, it's 2 years later and we're doing 20 things that we didn't say we were going to do, right? You can imagine that happens. You get into it, right? So what we started to do is I started to reflect on our paid work, and I thought, why does that happen those kind of scope creep, why does that happen in a limited way there? Oh, because we have contracts, or we have a scope that we've agreed to, right? So we started actually generating pro bono contracts. And so what happens is someone will come to our site, they'll apply to benefit from our pro bono services, we'll accept them, we'll send them a contract, and it'll actually state what the monetary value of that service would have been if we were charging for it. And this triggers a lot of things, and it's actually ever since we've never had issues with scope creep. I keep saying scope creep. Scope Creek would be a fun place to visit. Scope creep.
That's like where you go up the creek without a paddle, right?
Yeah, perfect. Or the water just keeps getting taken away from you. So yeah, we've never had issues with that ever since. And part of it is this psychological thing that happens when you sign a piece of paper. The other thing that happens, though, is they're being told, hey, that would have been worth $10,000. And that really actually immediately forces them to rethink the way that they're valuing that service. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Brandon. Is there a philosophical reason that you chose half, 50%? or did you see that as the most generous you can be while staying, I guess, financially feasible?
That's a great question. Have you ever read any of my stuff online before? Okay, well, it's pretty cool you asked that question because I actually use that term, philosophical, quite a bit when I'm talking about 50%. Where it came from is realizing that basically, from my perspective, anything that you spend at least half of your time doing, it's no longer an extracurricular. It's core to who you are. It's integral to what you do. And so that's actually why I picked 50%. That's the reason. I wanted giving back to be a core thing that I do, integral thing that I do, but I also wanted getting to be core to what I do, right? I wanted to sustain myself, I wanted to grow my business, take care of my people. So that's really the idea, is not treating business or impact as extracurriculars, but both of them as really, the core deal there.
Good question, man. Who's up next? Somebody else had a question.
Hello, hey guys. My name is Samir. I have a twofold question. The first one is, how do you decide between all of the nonprofits that apply? How do you decide which projects to pick? And then the second question is, do you think that there's a difference between the quality of work that you produce for a nonprofit versus paid work?
Great question.
Yeah. Okay, so your first one is pretty easy to answer. So we actually maintain a give half balance. At any given moment, we're making sure that we're giving at least half of our work away for free. And I've said all over the world that if we ever give less than half, that I would quit. So now I'm saying it here as well. And so we actually are constantly monitoring that, and we publish on our Facebook page as well each month what our current give half balance is. So what that also allows us to do, though, is it allows us to know if we should even be considering new pro bono projects. For example, if we're 55% pro bono, I'm not even going to look at applications that are coming in. But if we're 50-50, that means we're really close. That's when we'll start looking again and we'll start accepting. So the short answer is it's complete luck when people actually submit that their application will be reviewed immediately or not, right? It's really based on that bandwidth. We have this large network, but we're not a crowdsourcing company. We're not taking on, hundreds of projects at once, right? So we have to be pretty careful with that. The second question that you asked was around the quality of the work and if that differs. Funny enough, it hasn't so far. And I think part of the reason is whenever we have our paid staff working on pro bono projects, we tend to actually not tell them that they're pro bono projects so that they don't even actually see it in a different way. The other thing is these pro bono, or these volunteers that we're working with, some of them are really seasoned actually and have been in the industry for 20, 30 years and are doing really great work. Others maybe are more junior level, but they're getting coaching from us as managers as well. If anything, I think sometimes the pro bono work is of higher quality because the client actually is a little bit more open to us trying new things as well. That's something that I've noticed.
So Matthew, if I want to become part of this 600-person network, where do I go to apply, or how do I get more information?
Yeah, great question. So joining the network is actually slightly mysterious, and that's by design. And I want to tell you a little story about that. So I was walking in Pasadena with a bunch of Chinese food on Colorado Boulevard in Old Town. And what happened is a canvasser came up to me, right? Someone with a clipboard, taking down emails, right? And they came up to me and said, "Excuse me, sir, do you care about the hungry?" And I was like, oh, fuck. I feel like such an ass right now because I'm carrying all these bags of food, but I'm actually really in a hurry right now. And so I totally blew them off. And I realized that I felt really bad. And that bad feeling, that guilt, as the trigger to actually try to inspire someone to get involved is a terrible strategy. Because you might get thousands of volunteers, but none of them are there for the right reason. They're there because you guilted them. So that's the context of saying that we never advertise, hey, join our network, sign up online. Basically, people hear that we do this, and they just email our info address, and then we take care of it. We get you in that network. So saying that to this room, right, anybody that's listening to, right, if you email us, basically that's how it happens. But we try not to make it that easy.
All right. Anybody else with a question?
So a little bit of a different direction.
What's your name?
My name is Tim, I'm sorry. How does the pro bono work affect the business model with regards to, does it become some type of a tax deduction when you do your filing for your corporate taxes? Or how does that free work benefit the company with regards to taxes?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the answer is depressing, actually. Pro bono work is one of the things that's most difficult to write off for a number of reasons. One, because we're using volunteers, we're not actually spending too much paid staff hours on that. So there's not a lot to actually document to say, hey, here's the tangible cost that our services, burdened us with, and so therefore here's what we should write off. There's instances where you can, if you track hours of a paid employee that was doing this, you could, in theory, track that, have the nonprofit write a letter for you, and give that to your CPA. And I'm not an accountant, by the way, but you could do that. Where it's easier is when you're actually giving money or physical goods, because those are much easier to basically say, hey, this is 50 cents, right? And this was given. With services, it's a lot more subjective on paper, so it's actually not much of a benefit there.
That's kind of depressing, man.
It's depressing. Maybe one day, maybe somebody that hears this is in policy or whatever and can do something about that, because I think it would encourage a lot more people that don't have this network that I have to do pro bono work, right? To actually allocate some of their time towards that. Who knows? Maybe one day that'll happen.
Shoot.
I don't think I would pay any taxes my entire life if this is the case.
So you guys are watching this, you're trying to figure out what's in it for Matthew, and it's like nothing?
No, there's a lot. I already said, right? So there's networking. There's building your portfolio maybe in a space that you have not been in. And then there's karma.
Oh, you're going to just play the karma card like that. So you guys are all evil, you have no karma. And Matthew has plenty to spare.
Come work with me.
He'll share it
Give
with
you karma. Yeah.
All
No,
right,
but seriously though, the networking has been invaluable. This is how I've gotten my largest clients, is by doing this. And and I started this when I was just a kid too. I'm still kind of just a kid. And that opened up a lot of doors. But the other thing that I'll say is being able to pivot from visual design to design strategy by way of doing pro bono work, that was insanely beneficial to me and to my company in being able to actually get us into spaces that are even more profitable, to be honest, as well. So that's been a benefit.
Okay, so far I've been very nice. I think we should have a little bit of a debate.
Yeah.
Is that okay with you guys? Because this is very interesting. So you guys, just to kind of recap here, Matthew is able to leverage relationships built on trust and giving very generously without a lot of benefit to him. But when he needs to stretch creatively or do something different, he can call upon that and say, I'm trying this new thing. I want to offer this new service. Is there something I can help you with? And clients that you build a relationship are more likely to do that. So you brought up, you went from doing visual design to doing strategy design. What'd you call it?
Design strategy.
Design strategy.
And not entirely from one to the other. I would say it's 50-50. So from 100% visual design to 50-50 design strategy, visual design.
Okay, so we also, if you guys have been following the story with the future, we also have made that transition, but I only had to give it away one time. Mm-hmm. And I did that mostly because I'm kind of new to it myself. So I offered it up to my clients. I did it. They had a good time. I learned a lot. They got a lot of value. The very next time I parlayed that into business. So how do we engage in this? Like, there's two sides to this, so let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Do you see flaws in the way I'm approaching it? We're friends.
Yeah.
You guys, we're friends. Internet hates me. That's why, now every stream I do, I just shut up. Because, why don't you let people talk?
I would say, to be honest, I don't see flaws in the way that you did it. Because, looking back, I think that there was you need that one example to basically be like, hey, look, I can do this. Will you trust me enough to pay me for it? So I don't think there were flaws. We kept doing it, right? And I think one of the benefits that we kept doing is strategy is a big bucket, right? So maybe we did that one project. Let's just say it's in, brand strategy or something. And that got us this paid brand strategy project. Well, we've also gotten into marketing strategy, competitive analysis, facilitation, strategic planning. I mean, the list goes on, right? So we did keep on adding new benefits from different projects. Maybe we could have done that in one if it was a really big, example, but we kind of split that up. And it's like a whole pizza of different strategy services.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're not different thus far. And you guys keep thinking about this because you can pour gasoline on this fire if you want, or just it'll smolder out and that's fine. So we're both in agreement there that in order for you to do something new and different, you need somebody to trust you that you can do it for. And I use old relationships. You use sometimes old and new relationships to do this with. This is fine. We also, I think, are in total agreement here where if you want to do something different, you got to make the effort and close the gap. You have to offer something up, and sometimes it comes at the price of free, and I'm okay with that too. So this is where we differentiate here, is that once I've done something, now, so you would say like, well, why did you need to do it in the first place? Couldn't you charge the first time? Yes, you can if you're really, really good and you're tenacious and you have the ability to sell anything to anybody. But really the reason why I did it, and I can only speak to this, is I did it because it wasn't for them. It was to prove to myself, this is valuable and I can do it. Because the next client I did it for never asked me for proof. So some of you guys think you have to do this to prove to them, show me the case study, but really this is to prove it to yourself, to have the confidence that you can do this and it is valuable. So now, having done that, I've been able to exchange this knowledge that I've been able to acquire to be able to do this for other clients for real money. And I'm still trying to find the ceiling to how much we can charge. So this is where maybe I'm pure evil and you're like purely good or something, because I want to be paid. I almost feel like it's a contest for me. That I have a belief that what we do is very valuable. Yeah. But until it's externally quantifiable in a dollar amount, then I say, then it's just in my head. Like I could think I'm the world's greatest father, but until my kids send me the world's greatest father plaque, I don't know.
Yeah.
Kids?
Well,
Right.
let me ask you this. When
Yeah.
you started Blind, right, aside from, hey, I want to follow my dreams, I want
Yes.
to do stuff that I love,
Yeah.
what was your measurement of success when you started it?
I think early on I had some dumb ideas of success. Now, I started Blind in 1995, a very young person then. I wanted to just be able to have employees.
Yeah.
I thought if I could have like 3 or 4 employees that I can hire
Yeah.
on staff, I've made it.
And what do you need to hire employees?
Clients?
And what do clients give them?
Money.
So money, right?
Yes.
So I think money is a measurement of success. And I've certainly measured success in that way as well, right? As any business should. But when I started Verynice, I actually started it thinking that it was not a business. I started it as a project. I thought, what's a weird, interesting new model I could create to bridge this gap between access to design and designers, right? And so for me, from day one, the success criteria was basically get my impact value up as high as possible, as fast as possible, and that's what's been my target. So I think that is a core place that we differ, right? Where I obviously need to generate revenue from my business, right? And support my employees and myself, right? I've got a mortgage to pay. I have a wife, a dog, 2 cats. But at the same time, one of the success criteria in my mind is getting that pro bono valuation up. Because to me, then I actually, met what my mission was when I started. So I think what it is it's a difference in framing between us, as opposed to much bigger, much more of a difference beyond that,
Now, I do want to say this for the record, that Blind is a service company that's driven by profit and the bottom line, for sure. I'm not going to deny that.
Yeah.
But here at the same time, I'm producing videos that cost me a lot of money to make and giving it out for free.
Absolutely.
So there, the model of impact or the measurement or the unit of success is very different. It's about how many lives we can reach and touch in real meaningful ways.
Absolutely. And that's why when you look at that Venn diagram that I showed earlier of impact and revenue, I think any business that is currently thriving, surviving, but also has a founder or a CEO that is in any way happy is actually embodying those two that Venn diagram, right? It's not literally, oh, impact is always you're giving your work away for free. Impact can be a lot of different things. Like I said, impact for you, I think, is this.
Yeah.
I mean, this is this huge gift to the world, right? You get all these people looking at these videos. Maybe some of them were going to go and spend a bunch of money on college and now kind of get the chops they need without having to do that, right? That, to me, that is your give model, right? Your give back model. Whether that's half or not, who cares, right? Half, as we talked about, that was my philosophy.
So how about this point of view? Why don't you just charge 100% instead of giving it away for free and use 50% of your profit to donate?
To donate money.
Yeah. How about that model?
Because I have a lack of trust. So I have a lack of trust of where that money goes. A lot of the times that money will go to hiring a designer that'll do a really crappy job. And then they basically blew that money. This is speaking particularly, in the design services world. Obviously that money could also go towards other things. But more often than not, if I'm donating money to an organization, I have a lack of trust that, not necessarily in them, but in who they spend that on, that'll actually get done well. And so for me, part of what I like about pro bono is money is kind of taken out of the picture. Now I'm just doing something that was their end goal anyways, and I'm hopefully doing it right in a way that actually leads to even more success for them.
Okay, hold on. Now I'm kind of trying to wrestle this in my brain. You're giving away free work because you believe in a company.
Yeah.
You vetted them. What's the difference between doing free work versus giving them money? You're helping them one way or the other. How they use your free work, how they use the money you give, is at some point up to them, and you either believe in them or you don't.
I think the difference is if an organization really wants, $10,000 to rethink their social media strategy. This is the very specific scenario. I'd be really worried that they are given that check from me, and then they go and hire a vendor that basically does a bad job, and all that money was wasted. Versus I trust myself. I know that I'll get it done right. And so if I can give them $10,000 worth of services that they would have otherwise had to spend that check on and do it right, I feel better about it. That's not to say that donating money is something that everybody should stop doing. It's just not how I give back.
I guess we were talking about this in a very specific design services way, but there are shelters for battered women, homeless shelters, tons of things, scholarships, those kinds of things where it's not about creative services. So I'm not going to argue with you. If you give $10,000 for them to buy creative services for somebody else, who better to do it than you? Right? That makes sense. But I'm just talking about, like, say, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, where they're pretty smart about spending their money. So smart that Warren Buffett's like, here's my money. I trust you guys to spend it because you'll vet it. You'll make it go to something like curing cancer or some other disease.
Well, here's the thing, right? So those kinds of people, they have monetary resources far beyond me, but I actually have insane amount of resources in terms of people that I can actually put into a place. And so me not being a multi-millionaire guy, right? I'm actually able to give a multi-million-dollar gift without needing to whip out my checkbook. And what's cool is that actually brings a lot of power versus writing a $10,000 check. You're kind of limited in the scope that could accomplish. Even actually when you talk about buying a new shelter space or a new bed, right? You might get a few beds, but then they won't be maintained and they might break over time, right? So that's the thing. Services obviously need to be maintained too, so there's no perfect story here, but that would be my perspective.
Okay, I like the way you said that. You've obviously thought this through. So just want to say, in case you guys were figuring it out, you don't want to give dumb money away, $10,000, because that doesn't leverage any of your skills and talent. But if you give $10,000 of creative services away, given your network, how you know how to design and art direct and pool resources together, that $10,000 could look like $100,000. And so you're multiplying your money, your capital.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay.
There's a social entrepreneur named Ryan Scott that I've worked with, and he said talent is a multiplier. And I think that that's a really great quote. It really mimics what you just said, right? That if you get the right people in the room, focusing on the right cause, I mean, yeah, it can lead to these incredible things.
Okay. So let's say I'm a really rich guy, which I'm not, and I just want to give you money because I believe in what you do.
Yeah.
Would you accept that?
I'd accept it. I got plenty of things to work on. and I'll execute it.
All right, so they just need to search you out and send you an email. If you guys want to give Matthew and his company Verynice and his models of impact,
And I'll give
you
Chris
guys can
10%.
donate. Hey, all right. This is how social good and commerce work together. I love that. Beautiful. You guys, any questions? You guys want to push this around a little bit? Pro, cons, we're all adults. We're all friends. We can talk. Okay, boom. Who's got the mic?
My name's David, and I've been following two of you guys for
Awesome.
a couple years, and you guys are doing a good work. And my question is, it was kind of piggybacking the question that the other guy asked. So let's say you have a room for accepting pro bono works, and let's say there are a bunch of organizations who've applied within that period of time. Then how do you vet the organizations? And the reason I'm asking this is what Chris brought up was very interesting. So for example, organizations, typically nonprofit organizations, they spend money for their programs and their fundraising. And fundraising requires a lot of visual design work because it's marketing. For them, I think it makes sense to provide a creative service instead of money. But programs is something that you kind of trust because you're vetting the organizations. So back to the question, so you're accepting applications, you're checking different organizations' work and their programs and marketing. How do you pick an organization that you want to support and work with?
Really great question. And hopefully, what I'm about to say will help all of you guys too. If you're about to, whether it's donate money or donate time or whatever it is, I look for either, if it's a big organization, do they have a great track record of success, right? Have they actually accomplished really great things, or are they just a marketing funnel, right, for awareness and not actually doing anything? If it's a smaller organization, which is much more common with who we're working with on a pro bono basis, I actually look for how specific are they. So a lot of times you'll get a small nonprofit that comes out saying, hey, we're going to end world hunger. And it's kind of like, you're probably not, And so therefore, will my work actually really lead to something kind of tangible? Versus if they're saying, we're going to end hunger between 5th and 6th Street, between Los Angeles and Wall Street in downtown, I would really be excited to work with them because they're actually trying to limit the scope of what they're doing, and therefore they might actually achieve their goal. There's a wonderful nonprofit that I think you all should support called Dig Deep, and they do this in an incredible way. They're a water rights organization. They actually started with a story of we're gonna build water wells like everywhere, all over the world. And they pivoted their mission to focus on Native American reservations in the United States. And for a while there, they were actually focusing on just one single reservation in New Mexico. And they actually gave water to every single family on that reservation. I mean, that's crazy, right? They actually fulfilled their mission, and now their mission changed to another community. So it's really cool when it's that specific. One of my earlier pro bono clients, all that they did, all that they aspired to do was throw birthday parties at retirement homes, right? So people that maybe don't have families to come celebrate with them, they'll show up with a cake and they'll throw you a party. It's just such a tangible mission, and so that's what we get really excited about, I would say. Something that feels like they could actually change what they want to change, not these big audacious things that can
Not
never
like try to
actually
change
happen.
1 billion lives on planet Earth. That's
Yeah,
just-
totally. And some organizations maybe could, but it's just very few of them actually could do that.
Okay, over here.
Question a little bit more about design, not as far as a business strategy. Do you guys use the design systems? How expensive you guys go with the client? So do you
For the pro bono work?
do you buy the typeface? Do you do packaging for them? Do you do everything, or you're just
Yeah.
trying to keep it simple?
That's a great question. We focus purely on the services. So if they're trying to, let's say they're trying to run, 1,000 books that they're printing, that cost would be on them. Same with things like typefaces, etc. And actually what's really cool about that is that becomes a really great creative constraint. Any designer, right, we thrive on constraints, right? That's kind of what creativity is all about. So what we'll do is we'll actually kind of pose the question, do you really need to print this thing? You know, or could this be a website, right? Or a social media campaign? We actually try to think, okay, what was the goal of this project and how can we do it in the most economical, resourceful way possible? And we've gotten pretty good at that because pretty much everyone we work with doesn't have resources. So to answer your question, we don't pay for that kind of stuff, but we try to find ways around it.
Yeah. Great. So right behind you, go ahead.
Hello, Justin.
Hey, Justin.
How you doing? Conflicts. So what if you're on one side of the 50% and you're working on a project and it's going really well, it's very ambitious, and lights at the end of the tunnel, everything's good, but you also happen to end up picking up a paid client on the other side. How do you resolve those conflicts? And so for an example, it would be, we're in California, so it'd be maybe you're doing a marijuana farm or something, and then you get Pfizer knocking on your door to do some kind of cannabis. Something like that.
You know, that's such a good question, and I can honestly say I haven't faced that scenario yet. So I actually not too sure what I would do. I'm kind of the person that would try to find a way to make it work. And maybe that's by pushing out the timeline or something like that, but I actually haven't honestly faced that. Another question I get quite a bit is, what if you have some bad company come try to work with you? Would you work with them, right? Like BP or something, would you work with them? And the answer is, when your company is called Verynice and literally everything that you ever spew out in marketing is around social impact, you don't get bad companies even approaching you. So that's another type of conflict that I've never had to face because we just are so not interesting to those people.
So the filtration's built in.
It is through the messaging, through the marketing, through the brand, yeah.
I think you're going to find that to be pretty consistent with branding altogether. Your site, your work, how you speak, what you talk about, it should act as a filter. This is why we will often say you got to stake something in the ground and claim some space that nobody else has claimed, and then you will attract the kinds of people that are attracted to the kinds of things that you say. And that's just the way it's going to work. So people who just put up a portfolio site have this problem. You stand for nothing, so you are for everybody and for no one. And that's why you get a lot of bottom-dwelling clients saying, do this thing for $100. That's the problem. So the ethos that Matthew's put out is very clear. The name is clear. I'm sure that all the messaging is clear. So evil corporations don't come knocking.
Yeah.
Saves you time.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Hey guys, my name's Liam. I had a question. What would you say to more junior designers who are starting out, who are kind of stuck in a rabbit hole of doing free work and not actually being able to get paid?
Yeah. So I would say, one thing is actually to just stop doing that. It depends on free work for who, though. I would say start to actually put some strict rules, right? The word strict came up earlier around who are you giving this work away to and who aren't you. And after 5 projects or something like that, you have pretty good proof that you can do this stuff. And I would say you have what you need to actually start getting some paid work. You could also go back to the current unpaid clients and say, hey, maybe you guys don't have resources for this, but I want to let you know, I'm trying to pursue this. I want to build a practice around this. Is there anyone you might refer me to? And you'd be surprised what happens, right? I still get projects to this day that 10 years ago is where that seed was first planted. I'm sure that happens with you too. People you meet long time ago, they pull through or somebody had connected you to them.